I'm the head of the Criminal Justice and Regulatory Department at Stevenson's. Our team consists of lots of very, very experienced criminal lawyers, all of whom have specialised in criminal law for their entire career. They specialise in serious and complex criminal prosecutions, and in particular, fraud prosecutions. And those frauds take a variety of forms, but in particular, we're seeing lots of investment frauds these days.
The team that I'm involved in specialise in all fraud cases and serious crime, particularly in respect of investment fraud. We deal with various types of investment fraud in respect of Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, advance fee schemes. We also have experts that we use in respect of the defence of a client. We instruct experienced barristers who specialise in this area of work. We take a proactive stance in the defence of all our clients.
Investment fraud involves a deceit or deception designed to intentionally induce somebody to invest in a fraudulent product or investment. Very often we find that they have a number of common features. For example, they'll very often involve promises of high yields or high interest rates. They will sometimes involve professional advisors such as solicitors, accountants or financial advisors, and that's designed to give the fraud a cloak of respectability. There are often common features and common themes, including things as also such as offshore funds, offshore investments, that make it difficult for investors or victims to check on their investment. In terms of the different types of frauds, there are banking frauds, there are advance fee frauds that involve upfront payment for the promise of some later return. Land banking frauds involve investment in land or property whereby there will be a return on the investment once planning permission is granted or a development begins, but those developments never actually progress. There are things like boiler room frauds that involve call centres making outgoing cold calls. Ponzi schemes or pyramid frauds where earlier investors receive profits from more recent investors. Fraudsters are becoming more and more innovative in the frauds that they dream up.
Investment frauds do change and they have a tendency to change because once they are recognised by the authorities, then they have to find new ways to try and, in essence, scam people out of their monies. They all involve the same kind of promises that they will have a high interest on the monies that they put into these schemes. And it isn't just people who are scammed into investing into these schemes, but it's also people who could find themselves then being arrested, being innocently involved when they had no idea. So if something says, we will give you this so much money in a market currently, then clearly you would have to second guess why.
The people who are involved in the commission of investment fraud can vary wildly. It can involve professional advisors, it can involve solicitors, it can involve accountants, financial advisors, ordinary members of the public, or professional criminals. I think it's important to make clear, however, that innocent people are occasionally accused of investment fraud. It's not unheard of, and we certainly come across these cases where people, through their naivety, find themselves embroiled in investment fraud. So what can happen is that the main fraudsters will involve what are known as gatherers, who are often referrers of work or agents of the main fraudsters, whose role is to find as many potential investors as possible. And that enables the fraudsters to layer and pool investments in order to make it more difficult for them to be detected and to enable them to make more money. And often people will believe that they are selling legitimate investments and referring them on in appropriate cases without realising that actually it's a fraud, because they are taken in by the fraud themselves. The problem with that is much later on, if they've been involved in the scheme for a long period of time and have referred a lot of investors to the fraudsters, then it can appear to the authorities who investigate that they themselves are part of the fraud. Investments, of course, can go up as well as down, and occasionally we find inexperienced investors who turn out to have made a bad decision, who haven't researched the investment properly and perhaps lose money for perfectly legitimate reasons, subsequently complain to the authorities about the investment. And if there are multiple investors who've had a bad experience with a particular investment product, who all complain to the authorities, then they may sit up, take notice and investigate it. Innocent people who've sold legitimate products, but they turn out to be a bad investment for quite acceptable reasons, can sometimes have the quality of their advice and the quality of the investment judged retrospectively by the authorities, which can lead to a criminal investigation in some cases.
In respect of investment frauds, there is no typical length of time that a case will take, because in respect of investigations, they can take years, many years, where authorities are trailing through paper trails, looking through computers, seizing telephones, obtaining witness statements, looking at bank accounts, bank statements. In respect of many cases regarding land banking fraud, those cases take place abroad, so it's then liaising with other countries to try and find out information. The essential point, though, is that it is necessary, even though it may take years, to instruct a solicitor to be involved from the outset. Generally as well, there's a police investigation at the early stages, or the prosecuting authority, where they'll ask a client to come in to be spoken to, and that evidence or that interview, if charged, will form part of the evidence, and therefore again it is necessary to obtain legal advice. If at that point they are then charged, it falls into the court process, and that does have more timelines and is governed by the criminal procedure rules. But again, the actual length of the trial, the time to get into trial, is all case dependent. There isn't a typical case, and then following on from that, if convicted, there will be a sentence, and generally in these cases there then follows proceeds of crime applications as well. And there are also other applications that fall within those investigations in respect of restraint orders, and as Sean says, the whole process can have a damning effect on a client, and in respect of restraint, they may restrain assets that cease businesses, that affect people's personal lives. So again, I reiterate that even though there's no specific timescales, it is important that you do get legal advice from an early stage. The penalties in respect of fraud is set down by the Sentencing Council guidelines, so they are very specific, and they work in detecting the culpability of the client, that's how much they're involved, and then the harm that it causes to a victim, or the potential harm it could cause to a victim. And then they will take into account also the impact on a victim and how it's affected their lives. So it's very much set in categories in relation to the culpability. Then one takes into account the aggravating features if someone's got previous convictions for this offence, or mitigating features, mental health issues, good character, and the judge will then come to a sentence which reflects the harm, the culpability and the personal circumstances. And then obviously there's the ancillary matters that will also flow from any sentence that are indicated in respect to the proceeds of crime.
People should make sure that they have a solicitor that, first of all, absolutely specialises in defending allegations of fraud. Secondly, that it's a law firm that has the resources to invest in their defence, because these types of cases involve thousands and thousands of pages of evidence and documents, and there is an enormous amount of work to be done in preparation in order to put forward a defence and to do it well. There are some independent directories that will give information about the quality of lawyers in different areas of law. So things like the Legal 500, for example, is an independent directory that ranks the top 500 law firms in the country in areas of law like fraud. Not only will they rank the law firms themselves, but they'll also provide information about the quality and experience of the individual lawyers in those firms. So we at Stevenson's, for example, have for 4 years now been ranked as a Tier 1 fraud firm by the Legal 500. Our involvement at the beginning of a case can make the crucial difference. If we're present during the interview under caution in particular, that will cast the die for the rest of the case, and it can make the difference between whether a client is charged or not, and certainly even if they are charged and have to go to court, it can make the difference as to whether they're found guilty or not.